So this question of whether we were a early climate impacted region remained at the back of my mind. Then in 2012, I went for this. I got selected for this expedition, and in 2013, actually, I went to Antarctica. Uh, and one of the most memorable uh, days out there was in a place called the Antarctic Sound. And early morning, in the bitterly, bone-chilling cold, we are summoned up to the deck, and barely about 10 to 15 people out of the 80 who were on the expedition braved the chill. And what we saw was this huge tabular icebergs, and Robert Swan, the first man to have walked to both the poles, he pointed out that these were the remains of the Larsen B ice shelf, which had collapsed about 11 years earlier in 2002, when not many people believed in climate change. And suddenly it dawned to me that, what is happening, the threat of sea level rise from the collapse of ice sheets, which were protected by ice shelves such as the Larsen B and C and A and all of the others, uh, would be devastating, especially for low-lying countries like Bangladesh, and then would aggravate the problem of uh, people being displaced. And it dawned to me that all those migrants to my region may have been the early climate refugees, because the more I read up, I learned about sea level rise, about salinization, uh, and in fact, during that trip itself, a few days later, I think the next day maybe, I got an email to be part of uh, the Pacific Warriors Day of Action, which was one of the earliest climate protests those days, where 15 nations which will be inundated before the rest of the world by rising sea levels. Uh, they had this huge demonstration globally, organized by 350.org, and my first act of climate activism was to hold up a solidarity banner from Antarctica. So that is how I became a climate activist. So, yeah, so that is basically the journey in brief. And then, of course, a month or two later, when I returned back, I went to Turkey to get trained as a climate reality leader. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Al Gore himself, who actually was behind An Inconvenient Truth, and he won the Nobel Prize for that.
Right.
And then I also met a lot of climate scientists and became part of this fantastic movement with so many thousands of climate leaders around the world. So now we work together basically.
Yeah. It was a cause that at that time in India, not many were talking about. And when you got drawn into this expedition with Antarctica, when you saw those ice shelves, like you said, and you were part of all of it, and you came back and spoke about it, did the people around you respond as in, it's still not close, we still have a long time, we are safer? Or was the response of immediate action? What was it that you see as a difference then to conversations that are happening now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those days, I remember that speaking about climate change was quite really hard, because people did not associate, and these were looked at as problems, far away.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that in those days, many people were just talking about polar bears and melting glaciers, which would not really touch a chord with the people. I realized that very soon, so I started in a different way. So I had two issues that I found to be very useful in connecting people. So if I was talking to students at any level, whether it was primary, middle school, or high school, or even college students, um, I would focus on biodiversity and then build up the conversation towards climate. So, everybody has a favorite animal or more than that. Um, a bird, or people who talk about tigers or elephants, and all of these are uh, affected by the climate crisis. um, that is one approach I took, and the other one was the water, because water is an universal issue, and it really helped that uh, it was around the time when the drought started across the country, especially I think in 2016, 17, that was the years which saw the worst droughts in many parts of the country. And one of the years, maybe it was 2018, I think the Niti Aayog said that we are suffering from the worst ever crisis in history. Uh, so water became an issue that could connect even people who'd otherwise be um, unaffected by any talk about the climate crisis. So to reach out to media, to political parties or politicians, to corporates, water was a uh, road that
Yeah.
made it possible to speak to them. So it was biodiversity and water, and in fact I developed some of my presentations around these.